Time now for the Wiltfong Whiparound with our Director of Recruiting, Steve Wiltfong. And Steve, I promise I didn't plan this, but we're going to start in Knoxville, where the Vols exact revenge over South Carolina. And it sounds like prospects in attendance, they had some fun with Neyland at night. Very cool atmosphere. But I want to ask you about three guys. Four-star running back Daniel Hill, four-star offensive lineman Jordan Seaton, and other four-star athlete Cam Michael. How did they enjoy their trip to Rocky Top?
Well, did you just undersell very cool atmosphere for a night game?
It was awesome.
Okay. Yeah. Well, Jordan Seaton said it was electric, the top uncommitted offensive lineman in the country and maybe the most coveted player still on the board for Tennessee. And look, Josh Heupel after the game talked about it being a line of scrimmage game and how they challenged the players to control the point of attack and owning it. They had 238 rushing yards to go with 239 passing yards in the 41-20 win. And Jordan Seaton also talked about the way that the players care for each other, just the chemistry, the culture within that locker room really stood out to him. This was an unofficial visit. He was going to take an official to Oklahoma, but wanted to get to Tennessee for the first time. Sounds like they have a great chance to get him back for an official visit. And speaking of official visits, Daniel Hill and Cam Michael took their official visit this weekend. Daniel Hill, the most coveted uncommitted running back in the country in the 2024 class, was on campus, and he talked about just the offense and, again, the versatility of the offense and the way they distribute the ball to the running backs in the passing game and the run game. And he also talked about the fans and like I said, the scheme. Now, I don't know if they did enough to make up ground on Alabama, but South Carolina, that's another program that's in his list of finalists. So for Tennessee to get a big win over South Carolina in dominant fashion couldn't have hurt with Daniel Hill. And then Cam Michael, coming into the visit, there's people that think that Tennessee leads for the two-way standout from the Peach State. Now, Tennessee was one of the first programs to start talking to him about offense, and he loves how explosive the balls are in that arena, but also sees an opportunity to maybe help them on the defensive side of the ball. But his first game there in Neyland really impressed him, and said he had a great time, and Tennessee will remain a major player for him as they battle the likes of Texas A&M, Colorado, Kentucky, Georgia, among others. Florida's in there too.
Neyland Stadium, a deafening environment for sure. And the Vols also drew the presence, Steve, of a number of prospects in the 2025 and 2026 classes. Four-star linebacker Eric Winters, quarterback Jared Curtis, who ranks number 2 among all prospects in the 2026 class, were also at Rocky Top. What do they think of the environment, Steve?
Well, Eric Winters, the top 247 linebacker from Enterprise, Alabama, has offers from just about every major program in the country. He said to me after the game, "Wow, I've got the opportunity to play under these lights. It's just a special college football atmosphere that Tennessee has for night games inside Neyland." And Eric Winters said it was crazy, said it was one of the better experiences he's had so far in his process, and pointed to just how much Tennessee has grown and become a better football team, one that's competing on the national stage under this staff. Amari Adams, same thing, top 247 defensive lineman from South Carolina in the 2025 class that Tennessee will battle the Gamecocks among others for. He was at Georgia earlier this fall, but he too love that environment, and just has really started to click with the coaches and players there. And then the quarterback, she brought up Jared Curtis. They also had Faison Brandon on campus from Greensboro, North Carolina. Those are two quarterbacks that Tennessee has offered in this sophomore class. Now, Jared Curtis said the atmosphere is insane there, and he just pointed to how quickly Coach Heupel turned things around, and says that it shows how much better they will continue to get under Coach Heupel and company. I think Tennessee's on the short list for Jared Curtis alongside those Gamecocks. He loves Alabama. He also loves Georgia, but Tennessee getting a big win in front of Jared Curtis. And then Faison Brandon is another guy that Tennessee would love to have. And he said the atmosphere is different and does the teams like a family. He has great relationships with the staff already, and they continue to get stronger over the weekend. And he says he'll be back at another game soon.
All right, let's go elsewhere in the SEC East while we still have divisions and can do that. Kentucky remains undefeated with a win over the Gators, and a few big targets in 2024 were there. But I want to ask about 2025 wide receiver Eugene Hilton Jr. If that sounds familiar, he is the son of T.Y. Hilton, also enjoying his trip to Lexington. Where does Kentucky sit in the race for some of this weekend's top visitors?
Yeah, well, we can start with Eugene Hilton, the 2025 receiver from Zionsville, Indiana. I live in Zionsville, Indiana, so I've had a chance to watch Eugene Hilton really develop as a player over the last 2 years, and he's really become one of the more exciting pass catchers in the Midwest, and Kentucky's been way out in front in recruiting him. He's told me back in the summer that they've done the best job recruiting him and doubled down on that this fall. And following his visit to the game on Saturday, he said this is definitely the place to be. He said it was amazing here, and the fan support really stood out to him. And then going to those two 2024 guys that they had on campus that are uncommitted, top 247 defensive end Brian Robinson, who's going to announce his commitment later this week. I have Kentucky on the 24/7 Sports Crystal Ball, and he said it was truly amazing. As always, his relationships with Coach Marrow, Coach Stoops, Coach Brad White, Coach Courtney Love have never wavered, and just talking to those guys about stuff off the field resonates as much as on the field. And certainly he loves the hard-nosed defense that Kentucky's historically had under Coach Stoops. And then Donovan Hamilton's another receiver from the Indianapolis area that Kentucky has offered. And I think Kentucky's the one to beat for him as well. He's having a fantastic senior year for Hamilton Southeastern. And he said Kentucky would be a good fit for him in a lot of ways, but specifically pointed to the fact that they need more big receivers. And he thought that could be a role that he would fill for them down the road. But he also said the whole staff cares for the recruits, and that genuineness resonated with him on his visits. I think Kentucky can land all three of those guys as it stands right now coming out of their win over Florida.
Let's talk about two teams that took L's this weekend, Steve. And first, with Auburn, they might have lost to Georgia, but I think they made an impression on a number of recruits. Some of the players that were on campus, Florida State commit KJ Bolden, Alabama commit Jeremiah Beeman, 4 stars, LJ McCray, and Nye Carr as well. What's the buzz coming out of Auburn's big visit weekend?
Well, KJ Bolden took 2 visits there back in the spring and fell in love with Auburn. Obviously, he's not committed to the Tigers. He's committed to Florida State. But I think that when you just ask him about the coaching staffs he feels most comfortable around, Auburn would be one of the first that he mentions. And he thought it was going to be a blowout. He told Christian Clemente from Auburn Undercover it obviously wasn't. Auburn gave Georgia everything they could handle in that ball game. And then I talked to KJ's dad, and he said the environment was crazy. And you can tell Freeze came to not just compete, but to win. And Auburn's got a lack of depth and playmakers on both sides of the ball. KJ Bolden would certainly help fix that in the secondary. And KJ said he's looking at Auburn a little different coming out of the visit. And I still think it's an uphill road to flip from Florida State, but Auburn continues to make him feel comfortable. Jeremiah Beeman, he talked highly, the top 247 defensive lineman and Alabama commit, talked highly of Jeremy Garrett, Auburn's defensive line coach, and said he's a game changer in his recruitment. Again, that's going to be a tough flip, and Jeremiah is also looking hard at Colorado. He was in Boulder earlier this month, but he said the environment on the Plains was great, fan base was amazing, and said that he thinks this program's turning around under Coach Freeze. Nye Carr is a top 247 receiver who recently decommitted from Georgia that quickly took this visit to Auburn. And he sees a major need at the wideout position to come in and be a playmaker, but loved the resiliency and how Auburn was able to give the reigning champs such a tough game. Now, he's going to be at Miami this weekend. I think Miami is the one to beat for Nye Carr, but Auburn gave him a lot to think about. And then you have top 247 defensive lineman LJ McCray, who talked to Christian Clemente from Auburn Undercover about how hard Auburn played. And now he's talked in the past to me about his great relationship with Coach Garrett. He feels like the program's going in the right direction, and he too believes in Coach Freeze. So Auburn moving the needle with some elite players as they try and push towards a top 10 recruiting class. And that's one that could also include top-ranked JUCO safety Laquan Robinson, who loved his visit too, guys. He's going to be at A&M this weekend, but Auburn setting the tone for Robinson.
Yeah, Hugh Freeze putting in some work into his first full class in 2024. We're going to talk to Christian Clemente in just a little bit, but first I want to turn the page to 2025 for the Tigers. You've got four-star quarterback Antoine Hill Jr. and four-star running back Alvin Henderson both in attendance this weekend. Where do things stand with those guys?
Well, they're a front runner for Antoine Hill, the top 247 quarterback from Houston County High there in the Peach State. This was his first game in Jordan-Hare Stadium, and he said the atmosphere and tradition they got going there is electrifying, and the performance against number one ranked Georgia shows a lot about the impact Coach Freeze and this staff have quickly had in rebuilding a program on where it's supposed to be. And the other thing that really caught his eye with Coach Freeze is just putting his current quarterback, Peyton Thorne, in the best position to make plays with his skill set. He says that just shows you that Coach Freeze takes what he gets and then gets the best out of them. And so he's excited to potentially play for a coach like Coach Freeze. And then I think Auburn has set the tone with Alvin Henderson at this point in his process. It said it was loud and electrifying, and being around the alumni players that were there and getting around the commits and coaches, he had a great time with that. So Auburn's in a great position for him. And another in-state player they're in a great position for is Zion Grady, one of the most coveted edge guys in the country. He told me Auburn continues to feel like home. So Auburn's going to have a chance to sign a great class in 2025, one that could include all three of these guys.
Like Auburn, Colorado came up short on the field against USC, but they took more positive steps on the recruiting trail, Steve. Michigan State commit Nick Marsh was in Boulder, as well as Texas A&M commit Cameron Coleman, and one of the elite running backs in the 2025 class, Jordan Davison. What are they saying about their time open Folsom Field?
Well, Colorado showed a lot of grit and promise in front of these three dynamic playmakers. They watched a Colorado team erase a 34-point deficit and lose 48-41 with a chance to recover an onside kick that Lincoln Riley, they had to be nervous. They were outgained by Colorado 564 to 498. So these guys, Nick Marsh, Cam Coleman, Jordan Davison, seeing an offense that is one of the most electric offenses in college football right now. Now, talking to our colleague Alan True, 24/7 Sports national analyst based in the state of Michigan, he thinks Nick Marsh is aiming to get back for an official visit. I had a chance to talk to Nick Marsh after his visit, and he said there's a need for wideouts still, and he really enjoyed that atmosphere in Boulder and talked about the work ethic that he saw from that program in his short time out west there. He really enjoyed that. And then Cameron Coleman, I was hearing early in the week that visit was going to get pushed to later, but his family said, hey, you got to go out and see it. And talking to people that spent time with Cameron Coleman, the Texas A&M commit, that he had a great experience as well. And this is a guy that Colorado is really going to push for here moving forward. Then Jordan Davison, this was his second time on campus, had a phenomenal visit back in January. He said great atmosphere, great coaches, great fans. The way they get the ball to their running backs in space continues to stand out. And then also how Colorado goes about his business. But the culture they're building, I think that resonated with all three guys in Colorado. They put on a show offensively and showed that they're going to be potent under Deion Sanders and company, and they see an opportunity to keep that train rolling.
Definitely a show offensively, and on the sideline, it's pretty cool when you see a star-studded event in Boulder. Steve, it's about that time of the program where somebody gets in my ear and tells me, you already know to ask for likes. Less than half of you watching right now have hit that like button. We can do so much better than that. Steve is telling you, hit that thumbs up button. It'll make us feel so much better. You know what makes us feel better, too, is when we talk about programs that we don't usually mention on this show. And this is definitely one of them. Sitting at number 26 in the AP Top 25, that's Maryland. The Terps, 5-0 to start the season, and has really caught the attention of an in-state talent in safety, Fahim Delane. He is the top player in Maryland in 2025 and the number 3 safety in his class. So how is that pursuit now going, Steve?
Yeah, a lot of recruits are buzzing about Maryland behind the scenes right now, but this is the crown jewel right now in the 2025 class, Fahim Delane from Ole Miss Good Counsel, who was back on campus this past weekend. And he said, I saw they have everything they need to become national contenders, including the fan base. He likes Coach James Thomas Jr., the outside linebackers coach, special teams coach, and then defensive coordinator Brian Williams. And that defense have impressed him. And then just building Maryland back up. He said just the amount of time and investment that Coach Loxley has poured into his home program is inspiring home athletes like Fahim Delane and company to stay home. He said the defense is playing fast and physical and aggressive. And then he added, it's always going to be the hometown team in the running for me. And we've seen them win out for guys like Stephon Diggs and Nick Cross in the past. And this would be another major coup if they can keep Fahim Delani home over what is a national offer list. And he's certainly thinking about it.
Ole Miss is another team we need to touch on, Steve, after their big comeback victory against LSU. In-state target Michael Johnson Jr. was one of the big visitors that got to see the fans storm the field there at Ole Miss. What kind of impression did Lane Kiffin and that staff make on the in-state target?
Well, I had a hard time reaching some of those recruits that were on campus, Blair, because they were rushing the field. It was a nuts atmosphere. One of the most fun game to maybe watch over the weekend with all that offense. And Michael says that he's going to be back at Ole Miss next weekend for the Arkansas game. So he's certainly high on the Rebels. The Rebels are looking at him as a wideout, and so they're definitely in the thick of it for him. I think they got a great chance to land our number 2 JUCO receiver, Deion Smith, our number 1 JUCO offensive tackle, Markel Bell, and then one more prospect, Tristan Jernigan from Tupelo, Mississippi, was there. He's currently committed to A&M, but they could maybe get off the spatula for him. They're trying to get him back for an official in December. Be really big game on if they're able to get that official on the schedule.
I'm hearing a lot of offensive prospects, Steve, though, but not a lot of defense happening in that game. So hopefully Lane Kiffin's working on that side of the ball on the trail as well.